So there's so many different ways of eating, and I like to call them ways of eating rather than diet. And there's a lot of maybe fads going on, maybe not, and not that they're not good necessarily, but I'm sure you get questions about keto all the time, correct?
Yeah, I get not so much about keto because a lot of my clients haven't really run into that much where they're like, should I do keto? Should I do this? Should I do that? What I do is I let them know what I offer, and I offer a well-balanced 40-30-30 plan. And if that doesn't work for them, then they can, do something different. So I don't get a lot of questions actually about keto. What I get is, what do you offer? And if it works for them, they come on board. And most people really like the balanced approach because it doesn't have that deprivation mindset.
Well, and it's more sustainable, and you have to have something sustainable long term. And true keto, if you're gonna eat true keto, it's very hard to stay in true ketosis and keep that lifestyle up. So it might work short term to lose weight, but I do know a lot of people that went on keto, they lost 40, 50 pounds, whatever, and then they went off and they went back to their old habits because they didn't change their real habit. It wasn't sustainable.
Right. And I was one of those people. I did keto for a while, lost a lot of weight. I felt great, but it just was not something that I could maintain. And then once I went off of it, all of the weight just came back. So the balanced approach has always worked best for me personally, which is why I like to coach to that as well, because it works.
40, 30, 30, 40% carbs, 30% fat, 30% protein?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. And so I do want to keep in mind there are a few exceptions, and that's partly what Shawn and I have talked to people where, you might have a nutritional need that's different, but that is where it comes into play that, we make exceptions and we work with it, because I think for most people, sustainability is also important to not have barriers, because if you, like you say, restrict things for so long, it gets thrown out. It's like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm tired of this. This is just not any fun. So.
Right. And that standard, that 40-30-30, like you said, is adjustable based on that person and based on what their goals are and based on what their needs are. So for example, I might put a CrossFit athlete on a little bit higher protein, maybe at 32 or 35% because of the level that they're working out at. And so that's the other thing I love about the balanced approach is that you can take into consideration where a person's at in their journey, make those nutritional adjustments and get them to where they want to be so that they can perform at their best.
Well, that's one of the questions I was going to ask you, because 40-30-30 doesn't work for everybody. And, maybe an endurance athlete, especially on days when they're doing, like, let's say you're doing a triathlon, 40% carbs is probably not going to be enough to finish that triathlon.
Exactly. And that's all taken into consideration when we do their client assessment. And, most people, if I have an athlete that comes to me and says, hey, I'm an endurance athlete, they're pretty well versed on what they need to do for their body. And so we just work together to come up with a common goal and a common solution.
And what do you have athletes, let's say your CrossFit athletes or your endurance athletes or any athlete, do you have them change their diet around their workouts?
No.
Okay, and then what about if somebody runs a triathlon one day? You must have them change their diet for that day, correct?
Yeah, I'll usually up their carb load like the day before, maybe even a couple of days before. But if the goal is truly weight loss, the consistency still needs to be there. So if they up it one day, they've got to lower it the next. They've got to stay within their range. How they do that based on what their performance or their event that's coming up is, that's kind of up to them. And again, they are pretty well versed in what they need to do for their body. So if they're having a triathlon on a Saturday morning, they're going to obviously up their carbs maybe Thursday and Friday. But earlier in the week, maybe they'll decrease them somewhere else so that at the end of the week, the average is still going to be within those guidelines.
Right.
If the goal is weight loss.
Right. That makes complete sense.